So what you're looking at right now is called false color, and it's one of the best exposure tools you can be using in camera right now, and no one is really talking about it. In this video, we'll also discuss the Luminance spot meter, the waveforms, and the other tools you can be using. You can decide which one is best for your workflow, and at the end of this video, I'm going to show you how to set it up in your camera. So false color uses different kinds of colors to represent different kinds of exposure values, specifically the IRE exposure values. For instance, if I turn off my key light here, now this image is blue and purple, and that represents a -7 to a 15 IRE value, exposure value, basically meaning that it's dark. But when I flip the light back on, you can see that my skin tone now is like gray, red, and yellow, depending how close I get to the camera or not. And this represents a 50 to 75 IRE value. I'm intentionally overexposing my skin right now so that later on I can bring the image down in post to clean up the noise in the shadows. You can also see that when I raise the exposure of my key light, how it is changing the colors that's appearing on my face. Obviously overexposed right now. And then bringing it back down, when you learn the colors and what they mean, it will be easier to identify. I think that the tools that the Lumix S5 offers is all blended into one, into the false color. You get to know where your highlights are, you get to know where your shadows are, and how the skin tones of your subject, or just where your subject lies on the IRE spectrum. You usually have to pay for this kind of tool, but luckily through the real-time LUT feature in the camera and the great people at this company, they provide a free LUT that you can install and be able to use it like this. If your camera doesn't provide the real-time LUT or vlog, then I'm sorry, I don't think there is a workaround. But you still might have access to the other exposure tools I'll be mentioning in this video. There is one drawback on this feature though. It really has to deal with the real-time LUT, but it will make more sense for me to explain that drawback after we talk about the other exposure tools first. Do you guys see that little square, that spot? That is the luminance spot meter. And if you can see the number there, how it changes as I pull my face in and out of frame, that is what the power of the luminance spot meter does. Yeah, you can move it around and have it lock on to whatever you want to focus on and be able to read what exposure value that is. It's different to the IRE scale. When it's leveled out to 0, that means it is middle gray. I've gotten into the habit of when the spot meter is reading 1.5 to around 2, that's when I know I'm properly overexposing my brown skin to then later on be able to bring it back down in post. And yeah, that's why I really like this tool. Before I found the false color feature, I'd really use this one and the next tool we'll be talking about. Being able to just move it to any object in the frame and know what the exposure level is makes it really easy just to know if I need to put another light on it. But I find myself using it most often for skin tones, the same way that you saw me use it for false color. The next tool we have on our list is what's called zebras. And you see that little black and white striping going on in my flashlight. That's where it gets zebras, I'm guessing. And this basically tells you when you're clipping. I have my camera set to where I want the zebras to appear when the exposure is above 95%. 100% is just completely blown out. So 95% is just a little under that. When you clip, when you blow out your image, then you can't bring it back in post. And so zebras is just an easy way to set it, and whenever you just catch that in your monitor or behind it on the screen, you know that you gotta put a ND filter on, you gotta raise the exposure, you gotta do something to knock it down and get that data. The zebras would help me take care of my highlights, while the luminance spot meter would allow me to just focus on my subject. And it just gives me more confidence when I'm shooting that when I get to editing, there's no surprises of me losing data in the highlights or the exposure of the skin was just off. The next two exposure tools we're going to talk about are my least favorite. First off, we have waveforms. The waveform is a graph that shows you the IRE levels from top to bottom. The higher it is on the scale, the brighter it is, the lower it is, the darker. And you can see as I'm moving around, so is the waveform, especially when I put my hand like that. When I move out of the way in the window, you can see how bright that is according to the waveform. I block it, see where that peak went, just disappeared. And if you can see right there, that solid green line represents like the middle value. That would be the same number as the 0 on the luminance spot meter. I just found it kind of hard to use in real life scenarios because when you have multiple subjects, when you're just moving around a lot, not just a locked off talking head, a movement with the camera, it's kind of hard to pinpoint what is what on the graph. It's like things like that what pushed me away from using this. So next up we have the histogram, and this one is very similar to the waveform, but you read it left to right this time, and left being darker and right being brighter. It doesn't really tell you the specific exposure values like the waveforms, but it just shows you which way your image is leaning towards. Is it leaning towards the darker side or the lighter side? Or in this case, it's showing that it's directly in the middle. When I brighten up my key lights, how everything is shifting to the right, and when I darken it, everything is shifting to the left. That's how the histogram works. The histogram will show you when your shadows and your highlights are being clipped or crushed, but with the size of it, it is kind of hard to tell in my opinion. I used the histogram for a long time. It does get the job done, I will say that. So maybe that is a positive with how small it is. It's just there, you can leave it up and just quickly assess whether or not your image is in the middle, if it's darker, if it's lighter. Okay, now that I explained all of the exposure tools, let's come back to that drawback I was talking about earlier about false color. The drawback is that's when I show you this window and it looks red. Specifically the lamp too, it shows that it's red. Red represents that it's clipping or that it's about to clip. Even when I turn on the luminance spot meter, the luminance spot meter is reading at 5.2. So still have a little bit under a stop to go before it loses data. The false color LUT, I can't speak for false color in general, but false color LUT isn't accurate in this point. Everything else seems to be right, like my skin, the shadows, but I would say just the highlights seem to be off. It's just not as exact compared to the luminance spot meter and the zebras. I still think that this tool is very powerful. Take that with what you will. Like, as I said before, my skin tone seemed to be the right RE, the shadows seem to be the right RE. It's just except for those highlights right there. But yeah, those are the best 5 exposure tools you can be using in your camera to nail skin tones, to nail just exposure every time. Now let's move on to how you can set this up in your camera. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is head over to the link in my description to download the false color LUT. After you download it, you want to put it on the SD card that you're going to be putting in your camera. Put the SD card in your camera, head over to the menu, click on the third gear icon. The top of the list, go to LUT library, select that, go to an open slot, select it, load, go to your SD card. So you want to select the version 3, and that one is for Vlog and at 100% opacity. After that, you want to head over to the camera icon, go to the top of the list, and then you want to go to photo style. Head over to real-time LUT. Then you're going to have to select this button right here, probably. Or first you want to scroll down to LUT and then select this button and select the LUT you want to use. There we go. And to make sure it saves, I do a couple of things. I hit display and I save it to the correct one, which one would be, I renamed mine false color. Then after I save that, I even select set. And I even go as far as going to the 4th one from the top, the gear icon, and going to custom, save to custom mode, and saving it. So that's what you need to do to load the LUTs into your camera. But now I'm going to be showing how you can just switch from Vlog over to the false color LUT with just a push of a button. If you don't know already, you can customize this whole D-pad, if that's the right word for it, by just holding it down and then a menu will pop up. The first thing you want to do is make sure that your picture profile is set to Vlog, and then I'm choosing this corner. You can choose anyone you want, but then you will find the photo style in the very top one. Go to photo style and select real time LUT. You select it, and now just with this push, I can switch back and forth. Now we're basically going to be doing that same thing for the rest of the exposure tools I showed you here. Choose any corner again that you want, hold it down, and here we have the luminance spot meter. You want to go to 2, go to the third camera from below and select spot meter. Then for a histogram, I selected the top one. I want to go to 2 again, the third from the bottom, and select histogram. To set your zebra pattern, you're going to want to go to the gear icon, go to the third from the bottom and zebra pattern. Go to set, and I have mine zebra 2 at 95%. I only use zebra 2, so that's all I need to do. And from there, I'm going to go back to the main screen, select a corner again. Then you want to go to number 2 again, and you'll find zebra pattern here, and choose the one you selected. I'm only using zebra 2, and there you have it. Now lastly, for waveform, you want to go to 2, go to the very bottom, and waveform/vector scope. Now select waveform monitor. And there you go. That's how you set up the custom functions to be able to toggle on and off your exposure tools. Talking about exposure can be a little bit tricky, so if I said anything wrong or am spreading any misinformation, please correct me down in the comments. Other than that, I hope this video was a ton of value. On this channel, we're going to be discussing Lumix and just things, content creation, especially for brands. So if you're interested in that at all, please consider subscribing, and I hope to see you in the next one. God bless. Bye.